one that can see.
Where there's thunder, there's lightning. John Nada. Would like to talk a little bit about the concept of resilience today, as well as a topic that's not normally discussed really in any sphere due to the difficulty of discussing such a topic, and that is one of suicide. Whether you're new to MGTOW or have been in MGTOW for 20 years before there was such a term, we're all coming to MGTOW from somewhere, be it divorce or other bad relationships experiences, or because you've seen the patterns and therefore the truth, or you're sick of being exploited and tired of being told you must make yourself a servant to someone else. You see, what a lot of people don't understand is suicide is not really wanting to die. People don't kill themselves because they really want to die. What they want to do is end whatever suffering they're going through. And oftentimes, the reason that people get to the point of suicide is because they have no coping mechanisms to deal with the things that are going on in their life. And because they don't have coping mechanisms, they don't have a whole lot of resiliency. Because this coping mechanisms, they help people be more resilient. They help people bounce back quicker. And if you look at the statistics, and we've talked about this a lot in the manosphere, but there are more male suicides and really more male death in general than that of females. Now, females attempt suicide more often, but oftentimes are less, able to actually be successful in their attempts. The attempts, I think, for the most part, are really less about actually ending the suffering and more about drawing attention to oneself. But the thing about male suicide is, especially when we talk about it in terms of MGTOW, is a lot of that is brought on by external factors, meaning there's nothing wrong with this person neurologically, or if they don't have any sort of mental illness that's causing the suicide. One of the actors from Kids in the Hall, he talks about, there's a good interview of him with Joe Rogan where he talks about the family court system in Canada. It's bad in the States, but it's also pretty bad in Canada, possibly worse in Canada than in the States. And as a result of that, there's been a lot of men who have committed suicide because of the aftermath of the divorce, where they're left with either the choice of going to prison because they're unable to pay the exorbitant amount of child support being extorted out of them by the state. Either that being due to just not, owing to the fact that they don't have a job that pays them enough to where they can sustain both themselves and the ex-wife and the kids, or, as is common now, they simply lose their job and lose their ability to provide income. And of course, the state is not concerned with that and doesn't have compassion with that. It's particularly bad in the military. And I've personally been affected by suicide or I've personally experienced fellow service members who did commit suicide. And yet male suicide is not something that gets brought up a lot or even talked about, particularly in terms of as it relates to divorce and alimony and child support and all that. But even in the sense of veteran suicide, it's not really something that really gets talked a whole lot about either, I don't feel. The thing with being a guy is, as a woman, and this is just my opinion, I don't feel like a lot of women are used to being hit with the truth. And so they're sort of looking at things through a haze, kind of like that frosted glass. But men are expected to just accept the truth and accept reality and deal with it and, quote, man up, which I can't absolutely abhor that phrase. So it's just simply less socially acceptable if you're a guy to be bothered with problems, to be dealing with things. And I can't tell you how many times I've dated a girl and I've noticed others who've been in relationships where they just simply had no outlet to talk to people about anything. Because as a guy, there's this concept that you don't have any emotions, you don't have any anxieties or problems or deal with life in the same way that any other human being would. That you're just simply supposed to shoulder the burden and go on about life, grin it and bear it, basically. And for a lot of guys, that's possible to do it. I mean, it's not an easy thing to do, but it is possible to do that for many years. But some people over a period of time, they, it's all in whether or not you have coping mechanisms to deal with things in life when they go awry. And I have my coping mechanisms, and other people have their coping mechanisms. And so for everybody, it's a different thing. It may be um, a support network. For me, I have family. I don't have a whole lot of friends, but I have three or four really good friends that have been friends for years that I know that I can count on and go to. Um, and the same goes for them. I mean, I have my family, which is not something that a lot of people have. A lot of people come from single parent households, or they come from households where they don't maybe speak to one parent or the other. I also have, a really good mentor friend of mine that I've mentioned that, I mean, he's kind of the go-to person because I know no matter what it might be, they're not going to judge me on the basis of maybe what's going on or how I may feel or think about something. They're going to listen to what I have to say in the situation, and then they'll give me a very well thought out um, answer or what they think would be a good solution or what they think about the situation. The reason I mention all this is because some of us have been doing this a while, and so as time's gone on, it's become easier and easier to deal with the new things that we've learned about reality and life. But you have a lot of people coming into MGTOW that are not only angry, but they're also upset. They feel hopeless. They feel alone, and they may have coping mechanisms, but they may not have those coping mechanisms, or may have lost their coping mechanism because for a lot of guys, let's face it, a lot of guys, they use their relationship, they use their girlfriend. They expect that person in their life to be a support system, a support network. And let's say, they've lost that and now they're coming to MGTOW to see what it's all about. And so they don't yet have that resiliency. And when we're talking about people dealing with the relationships and dealing with bad relationships or dealing with leftover feelings that they may have for somebody that's maybe causing this anxiety, stress, and depression, I know for me the no contact thing has worked. Because I feel like with MGTOW, it's a rebirth. You come away from everything, you cut off contact with those things that are negative or not productive, and you undergo a self-improvement time. And a lot of it is just redirecting life and redirecting your energies. I think self-improvement is a very worthwhile and good thing to do. And while there, finding validation from solid things, or finding validation from something other than another person. Because if all your validation is found in other people, you're going to constantly be disappointed and disillusioned. Because at the end of the day, validation must come from within. You must see your own self-worth. You must see the value in yourself. And if you don't see any value there, then you should work on yourself and find those things that you are good at. Find those things that do give you meaning, because for everybody it's going to be different. Do that self-improvement, and sometimes you must build that validation from within, because it's not always inbuilt, it's not always inborn. But I promise you, the materials, the beginnings of are there. You just have to put the puzzle together, so to speak. So I think that it's a worthwhile thing for us as MGTOW to not only work on our own coping mechanisms and work on our own resiliency in our life, because we all need it, but to reach out to those other MGTOW out there, particularly those who have just come to MGTOW, and maybe some of the younger MGTOW who are not as experienced, maybe not as in control of their emotions, and don't have that life experience, and to reach out and maybe be a mentor to one of those guys, or just be a mentor in general to those you meet along the way. I like to say it's a good idea to be nice to everybody you meet, because you never know what's going on in their life. You never know what battle they're fighting. And I think we as MGTOW are fighting a battle to get away from where we were into a place of peace. But it's foolish to think that you're simply going to be able to just walk away, and that the powers that be, as it were, are just going to let you walk away. You're going to have to make a detachment, and then a lot of us, can't just immediately disappear, go off grid, or whatever it is. We have to find out what path it is that we want to walk, and then figure out how to get there, because we're not just going to magically be there now that we say we're a MGTOW. So all that being said, I'd like to just encourage the audience to work on your resiliency, work on your coping mechanisms, and I promise as time goes on, you become more detached and you become more indifferent to the things that don't matter, and you begin to appreciate and become more mindful of the things that do matter and do bring meaning. That's all I've got today for you guys. I appreciate everybody's input, and appreciate you guys listening. Until the next video, remember, you're free to do as you're told. This has been John Nada in the Days of Thunder.